At 8 in the morning, in a prison somewhere in Japan, 3 guards are about to stand in a small room and press 3 separate buttons at the exact same instant. Only one of those buttons does anything. It drops a trapdoor out from under a man's feet, and the whole thing is engineered, deliberately, carefully, so that none of the 3 will ever know which one of them actually killed him. The man has no idea it's coming. He woke up, folded his blanket, ate his breakfast like any other morning, because in Japan they do not tell you the date you're going to die. You find out the morning it happens. Hold on to that image, the 3 buttons. We're coming back to it, and it's worse than it sounds. But I started there because it tells you exactly what kind of country we're walking into. This is Japan, one of the safest, cleanest, most orderly societies that has ever existed, where strangers line up in perfect rows and nobody touches your wallet. And its prisons are the strangest part of the whole place, because a Japanese prison isn't a dark exception to that order. It's that same order turned all the way up until it stops looking like safety and starts looking like something else. 15 things about Japanese prisons that an American brain simply cannot accept. And I'll be straight with you, the disturbing part isn't how alien it feels. It's that by the end, some quiet part of you might actually want it. Number 1, the fold. This crease, this single fold, right here could get you thrown into solitary confinement. Not a weapon, not a fight, a crease. In a Japanese prison, your bedding has to be folded so the seams all run the same way. Set down in one exact spot every single morning, identical to the man in the next cell. Picture a guard walking the row with what might as well be a ruler, checking your blanket against a diagram. Get it wrong, and there's no warning. One former inmate said he could be punished for folding his trousers the wrong way, pulled out of the routine, put alone in a bare cell, his work stripped away, left there to reflect on what he'd done, which was folding fabric incorrectly. That sounds made up. It isn't. It's documented by human rights monitors who walk these halls. American prisons obsess over contraband and head counts. Not one has ever buried a man in solitary over the shape of his bed sheet. And here's what should bother you. If that's how seriously they guard something this harmless, imagine how they treat something they consider actually dangerous, like the sound of your own voice. Number 2, the silence. 50 grown men are eating breakfast in one room, and the only thing you can hear is chopsticks. That's not a punishment block, that's an ordinary Tuesday. In many Japanese prisons, talking is restricted to the point that a man can go most of a day, wake, eat, work, eat again, without being allowed to say one word to another human being. Picture 18 hours alone inside your own skull. The day runs like a factory line. 1 hour in the morning to eat, brush, and shave all at once, all together. Even in the medical waiting room, men sit in silence, and they're told not to cross their arms or their legs while they wait. One inmate described it, choosing his words carefully, and you could hear the strain underneath. The hardest part, he said, wasn't the work or the rules. It was simply not being able to talk to anyone. He understood the logic. Let men whisper and staff start imagining plots. But he asked quietly, is that really the thing you need to control this tightly? And yet, somehow this same system, which controls something as basic as human speech, also feeds its prisoners better than a lot of free people eat. Wait until you hear this one. Number 3, the food. There are prisoners in Japan eating healthier, more balanced meals than millions of office workers grabbing a sad desk lunch 3 blocks from where those men are locked up. Grilled fish, barley rice, miso soup, fresh vegetables, planned a full month ahead by an actual nutritionist. The rice weighed on a scale before it ever reaches the tray. And here's the detail that stopped me cold. Thousands of ordinary law-abiding Japanese people will line up voluntarily to eat prison food. Prison curry sells out at public events, and free people pay for it. Because here, food isn't an afterthought. It's part of the machine. The calories are even tuned to your job. More for hard labor, more again if you spend January shoveling snow, less if you sit at a quiet bench, which leaves a genuinely strange question hanging in the air. If the food is this good, and the cells are this clean, and the violence is this rare, what exactly makes this place a punishment at all? The answer is something most Americans can't believe a prison would say out loud. They don't think they're punishing you. They think they're fixing you. Number 4, the work. Here's a question that sounds insane to an American. What if prison actually made you better at holding down a job? In the US, prison labor is a scandal. Pennies an hour, the ghost of forced labor, and companies cashing in. In Japan, work isn't the controversy. Work is the whole reason you're there. Nearly every inmate puts in close to a 40-hour week in a real factory, building furniture, stitching shoes, throwing ceramics by hand. And the strangest part? A lot of them ask for it. A prison official laid out the entire philosophy in 2 sentences, and it quietly rewires what you think a prison is for. Through work, he said, inmates relearn how to cooperate with other people. They relearn the plain dignity of finishing a task. To him, labor isn't suffering stapled onto a sentence. It is the medicine, the thing that takes a broken man and rebuilds him into someone the country will take back. And part of you hears that and thinks, honestly, that's kind of beautiful. Because to get fed into this orderly rehabilitation machine in the first place, almost everyone did the same 2 things first. They confessed, and they were convicted, at a rate you're going to assume is a typo. Number 5, the 99%, 99.8%. That is the conviction rate in Japan. Out of 1,000 people who go to trial, roughly 998 are found guilty. Sit with that, because your gut is already screaming the right thing. That is terrifying. That is not a justice system, that is a conveyor belt. That is the number you would expect somewhere with no rule of law at all, where the verdict is decided before you walk in. Except, it's not quite that. Here is the part nobody tells you. That number is so high mostly because Japanese prosecutors refuse to even bring a case unless they are already sure they will win. They quietly drop or shelve enormous numbers of cases before anyone sees a courtroom. So by the time you are on trial, you have been pre-sorted into the almost certainly guilty pile. And I had to check this 3 separate times. If you measured America the same way, folding in every plea deal where someone just admits guilt to dodge a trial, the US number climbs up near 99% too. So the cartoon is wrong, but do not relax, because a real gap does exist, and it lives inside one chilling question. How do you build a case you are guaranteed to win? You get a confession, whatever it takes. Number 6, the confession. Day 1, they walk you into a small room with no windows. You tell them you didn't do it. Day 4, same room, same chair, same 2 detectives, one in front of you, one at your shoulder. They ask again, you answer again. Day 12, same room, same chair, same question. You still haven't been charged. You still haven't had a lawyer in the room. Because in Japan, police can hold you exactly like this for up to 23 days before they formally accuse you of a single crime. In America, you ask for a lawyer and the room changes. In Japan, the room keeps going. They have a name for what they're digging for, a confession, the king of evidence. Critics have their own name for the method, hostage justice. One man said the way they treated him was, in his words, the equivalent of torture. The shouting, the insults, all routine. To a foreigner, he said, they'd lean in and tell him he had no human rights here at all. A French businessman held this way said the building was spotless, almost peaceful, and that the cleanliness wasn't what broke people. The rules were, you couldn't even tap a rhythm on the wall. Now imagine you're innocent. Imagine the only exit is to confess to something you didn't do, and that staying silent is the very thing keeping you in. Most people break, but one of the most powerful men on the planet refused. He climbed into a box. Number 7, the man in the box. His name is Carlos Ghosn, until then one of the most powerful executives alive, running Nissan, Renault, and Mitsubishi at once. Arrested in Tokyo in 2018, accused of hiding tens of millions in income, and facing that 23-day machine and a trial he was sure he would lose. So he ran. A crew folded him into a giant black audio equipment case, drilled holes in the bottom so he could breathe, and wheeled him onto a private jet like stage gear. He surfaced in Beirut. The instant he was safe, he detonated. He told the world he'd refuse to be held hostage one more day by what he called a rigged system, one where you are presumed guilty before you begin, where the interrogations exist to break you, where he'd had, in his words, zero chance at a fair trial. Now the honest other half, he jumped bail to run. He'd promised to stay and prove his innocence, and broke that promise. Japan's own justice minister fired back that the system protects human rights and follows proper procedure, and that Ghosn was smearing it to excuse his escape. So who's right? Hold that thought, because the system he called rigged has a quieter cruelty that has nothing to do with guilt and nothing to do with money. It comes for everyone inside, every winter. It's February. Your fingers are too stiff to fully bend. You can see your own breath inside your cell, and you are forbidden by the rules from putting on a second shirt. For most of its history, the Japanese prison system did not heat its cells. Everywhere except the frozen northern island of Hokkaido, where even the government admitted you cannot leave people unheated through that winter, the cells simply went cold. Human rights monitors documented inmates genuinely suffering, with blankets and clothing too thin to matter. And that rule about the extra shirt is real. You sit and you take it. Because the calendar says it isn't winter uniform day yet. Then summer flips the same concrete boxes into ovens and people have died of the heat. Somebody touring one of these places asked the obvious question out loud. This is a wealthy country. The building clearly has the money. Why is there no heating? The answer was almost insulting in how small it was. Budget, a line item. To an American who fights a roommate over the thermostat, that barely computes. But here's the part that turns this from cruel into something colder. That freezing cell never asks whether you're guilty, and some of the people freezing in there were innocent. His name is Iwao Hakamada, and he holds a record no human should ever hold. More time on death row than anyone else alive on this planet. 46 years. A former boxer, sentenced to die in 1968 for the murder of a family. The case rested on a confession he said was beaten out of him. There are those 23 days again, and on blood-stained clothes supposedly fished out of a tank of fermented miso paste. Decades later, a court ruled those clothes had been planted. The evidence was fabricated. In 2024, he was finally declared innocent. But look at what 46 years did to him, because this is the part that's hard to hold. The man who walked out barely speaks. He lives somewhere deep inside his own head. A woman who visits gently massages his hands and he simply falls asleep. Because after that much time alone, human touch is the only language that still reaches him, and he is not a one-off. A woman named Aoki Keiko lost her small daughter in a house fire. Police refused to believe it was an accident and wore her down. Cruelty, then sudden warmth, telling her to apologize to her dead child. Until, exhausted, she nodded once. That single nod cost her 20 years. So hold Hakamada and Aoki against that 99% and feel them grind together. Because now we go back to the man from the very first scene, the one folding his blanket, the one who doesn't know. Number 10, the knock. In Japan, if you're sentenced to death, no one tells you the date. You learn it the morning it arrives, often with 1 or 2 hours of notice. Your family usually isn't told until after you're already gone. So live one of those mornings with him. Footsteps in the corridor, the jingle of keys, a door, and then the thing every condemned man's body has learned to dread. because for years, every set of footsteps has carried the same question. Is that breakfast coming? Or is that them? One inmate described the morning he realized the man in the next cell had been there at dawn and was simply gone by noon. When it's your turn, nobody says the word execution. A guard tells you you're wanted at the office. A small, merciful lie. You walk. There's a body check. A door slides open. A room with a trap door cut into the floor and a rope already hanging from the ceiling. And next door, remember, 3 buttons, 3 guards. They press all 3 in the same instant, and only one drops the floor. And the whole thing is built so that not one of them ever has to carry the knowledge that it was him. I've researched a lot of grim things for this channel. That detail is the one I couldn't put down for days. Japan says the no warning system spares a man the agony of counting down to a date. Critics say a countdown running every morning for a decade is infinitely crueler. I won't settle it for you. Ready for some emotional whiplash? Number 11, the whiplash. Same prison, same country. Inmates read newspapers. There are books, board games, scheduled TV. And in some facilities, I had to read this twice. There is karaoke. A system that can punish a man over a blanket crease can also, on the right day, hand him a microphone. It gets stranger. Once a year, some prisons throw open their gates and hold a festival for the public. Ordinary families wander in, buy goods the inmates made with their own hands, eat that famous prison food cooked in enormous batches, and I promise I'm not inventing this, try on prison and police uniforms for fun and pose for photos. One visitor laughed, maybe it's better in there than out here. You get fed, you can watch TV, you just can't smoke or drink. So now you're holding both things at once, the trapdoor and the karaoke night, under one roof, and you genuinely cannot tell anymore whether this is the most humane prison system on earth or the most quietly ruthless. Keep holding both, because the strangest residents of this strange place aren't the killers, or the executives, or the wrongly condemned. They're somebody's grandmother, and there are more of them every year. Number 12, the nursing home. There are prisons in Japan where the guards spend more time helping inmates to the toilet than breaking up fights. Read that again. Japan's prisons are quietly turning into nursing homes, and the numbers are hard to believe. In the 1970s, inmates aged 60 and over were a rounding error, about 2.5%. By 2017, nearly 1 in 5 prisoners was elderly. These buildings were built for strong young men, and now the staff improvise as caregivers, helping inmates walk, helping them eat, changing their bedding. Officials openly admit some of these prisoners can't live in a normal cell anymore. They need a ward. Picture it, an officer trained to control dangerous men, spending his shift walking an 85-year-old to the bathroom and back. That's an ordinary job in Japan today, which forces the question that quietly breaks your heart. Why are so many old people in Japan ending up behind bars in the first place? A crime wave of grandmothers? No, the truth is so much sadder, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. A lot of them are there because they want to be. Number 13, on purpose. This woman commits crimes because prison is less lonely than freedom. Let me say it plainly. There are documented cases of elderly Japanese people, older women most of all, shoplifting deliberately, on purpose, so they'll be arrested and sent away. Not once, in a flash of desperation, again and again as a plan. Because outside, they are alone in a way that's hard for us to even picture. No family, no money, no one who'd notice if they vanished. And inside there are 3 meals a day, a clean bed, a schedule, and people, voices, faces, someone who says good morning. One elderly woman described it, and it has not left me since. She said she had never really eaten proper meals in her whole life, and now here was real food, handed to her every single day. On the outside, she couldn't fall asleep until past midnight, alone with the silence. Inside, lights out at 9, and she slept like a child. The exact regimentation that horrifies us out here, the timed days, the folded blankets, the silence, is, to the most forgotten people in one of the richest nations on earth, the closest thing to dignity anyone has ever offered them. That should ache, and it should tell you this was never really about prisons at all, because this obsession with order doesn't stop at the prison wall. It is the entire country. Number 14, the whole country. The prison didn't invent this logic. It inherited it. A train platform, strangers in perfect lines. A crosswalk at midnight, no cars. One man still waiting for green. A festival crowd, 500,000 people, almost no trash. A shopping street, volunteers, not police, correcting strangers before disorder spreads. Listen to what one old man on that patrol said. "If we watch each other," he explained, "if we correct each other, people think twice." But lately he worried, nobody corrects the young anymore. And if that keeps slipping, Japan will go bad. That's the whole video in one sentence from one old man on one sidewalk. The prison is not a bizarre exception to Japanese life. The prison is Japanese life. The lines, the order, the gentle constant pressure not to be the one who steps wrong, turned all the way up to maximum, which leaves exactly one question, and I don't think it has a comfortable answer. Number 15, the dilemma. So let me ask you the uncomfortable one, directly. Which system do you think creates fewer victims in the end? The American one or this one? Because both pictures are real at once, and that's what makes this so hard to hold. On one side, a system so clean and calm and nearly violence-free that its reoffending rate is, by some measures, lower than ours, and its loneliest citizens would rather be locked inside it than walk free. Humane. A country that takes care of its own, even the ones who broke the rules. On the other side, 23 days in a chair to manufacture a confession. Evidence planted in a vat of miso. Innocent men losing 40 years. A grandfather told he'll die before lunch with no warning at all. A shivering cell with no heat by design. A machine that grinds people down so quietly and so cleanly that it almost looks like mercy. Same system, both true. And I won't tell you which one is the real Japan, because I genuinely don't think there's a clean answer, and anyone who hands you one is selling you something. Efficiency or control, order or fear. Maybe the most unsettling thought of all is that those were never opposites to begin with. Maybe they're the same thing, seen from two different sides of the bars. Here's what I'll leave you with. The real question was never what Japan's prisons say about Japan. It's what your reaction to them just said about you. Because if any part of you, even for 1 second back there, heard 3 meals, a bed, a routine, people who don't leave, and thought quietly, honestly, that doesn't sound so bad, then sit with that one tonight. That flicker is the whole show. This is Shadows of Asia, where we chase the things that feel impossible, right up until you realize they're just somebody else's ordinary. There are a lot more of these doors to open, and most of them are stranger than this one. So come a little further down with me. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.